Today's show is sponsored by Quater. Quater is the new footwear and accessory brand by Travis Matthew. It offers incredible comfort and performance without the gaudy and distracting branding that you'll find on most performance shoes. Quater is committed to making products that fit seamlessly into your everyday style. Products filled with useful technology that can enhance any look while providing unparalleled stability all day long. So check out Quater.com/SBNation to learn more. That's CUATER.com/SBNation.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Tara here with a special all-decade episode of the Blazers Edge podcast. To help me out with the first all-decade episode of the season that we're going to do for the 50th anniversary, I've got Blazers Edge editor Steve DeWald here. Steve, how's it going?
Good. I'm happy it's Friday. I don't know when this is going to release, but I am definitely ready for the weekend and ready for the holidays.
Right on. And the Laker game tonight, right?
Well, I mean, I look more forward right now to the Blazers games where teams don't have winning records, but, you know, it's always exciting when the Lakers come to town.
Right on. We also have another special guest joining us today. He's the co-founder and executive director of Incight, which is an organization dedicated to unlocking the potential of people. Scott Hatley is also a huge Trailblazer fan. Scott, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thank you so much. Glad to be here with you guys and chat some Blazers.
Right on. So here's how we're going to do it. First, we're going to get to know Scott a little bit, and then we're going to go through the players that we have selected to be on our all 2010s decade team. But before we get into that, Scott, I'm wondering if you could just kind of introduce yourself and tell us about how you became a basketball fan and especially like your connection and love for the Trailblazers.
Yeah, no, most definitely. So I'm a native Oregonian, 4th, 5th generation, something like that. Born and raised in the Portland area. And, you know, just really NBA basketball and Blazers has kind of been a part of my DNA since I existed. My grandparents could first come to Portland after I was born back in 1979. And they started getting tickets to the Blazer games. And they've had tickets pretty much ever since then. So as a byproduct of that, got to go to a lot of those games. And you know, for me, it kind of became, I was one of those kids that would cry when the team lost back in the day. That's how into it I was. So, you know, I think just that connection and those memories for me of going to those games with my dad, and we'd listen to Courtside with Steve Snapper Jones on the way to the game, stop and get sodas and peanuts and sneak them into the Coliseum at the time.
Right on. So could you tell us a little bit about Incight and the work that you do at Incight?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started Incight about 15 years ago, and it's geared toward really unlocking the potential of people, and specifically people with disabilities and with various barriers that exist for being able to reach their dreams and pursue their desires in life. And, you know, Incight came around as a way to really create expectation and empowerment. Myself, I've got a disability, and I use a power wheelchair, muscular dystrophy, and, you know, I kind of sound like I got a Darth Vader mask on because I have this BiPAP mask. And so, you know, we kind of wanted to create an environment where, you know, disability is kind of more of a, you know, not an uncomfortable topic. So you might be interested to know a little bit more about what are some of the programs that Incight does. Well, we've focused a lot on providing those tangible tools that people need to get an education, get a job, and be independent. And so our programs focus initially, we got started as an organization with a scholarship program. And it was geared toward youth at that time, but it's expanded in that now we also provide a curriculum that's geared toward transition students with barriers that are focused on the key steps toward that transition. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, our education program. But what we have focused a lot on is our employment program and our jobs fairs. And we will have done about 30 of those this year by the end of the December. And we've been able to serve about 3,300 individuals. And these have kind of gone up and down the I-5 corridor. But the neat takeaway from the events is, where the economy is in a relatively good spot right now. And so pretty much anybody that wants a job is able to find a job. But at the same time, there's still a lot of individuals with various barriers that just have made that job seeking a difficult thing. And so to hear their stories, be able to connect them with employers and help them find a job, which for many provides so much hope and purpose and those key things that we all have in our lives that we can point to and talk about, that if you don't have that, it's a lot harder. And so we have that event, and then we do these events called Get Ahead, which are also kind of a subset of the job fair where it's additional skills and trainees or HR professionals will come. And then we have our independence program, which is geared toward helping entrepreneurs start businesses. And then also we have been a big focus on revenue generating activities here at Incight. And so one of those things we're launching in the new year is our Activate program. And it's geared toward universal inclusion, intentional leadership, and having speakers that can help influence the culture of the workplace and influence, having those conversations, like I mentioned earlier, around even disability and, making it not a uncomfortable topic, making it more of a normal population where individuals have the opportunity to interact and be able to ask those difficult questions or uncomfortable questions that maybe they need a little more detail on. So I guess it shapes up that we are doing quite a lot of different activities.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of things to do. I wonder if I could ask a question. I noticed at the Moda Center, one of the things I love about being a Trailblazer fan, being a sports fan, is the way it brings a lot of people from a lot of different experiences, a lot of different cultures, just brings a lot of people together to kind of rally around something together. When I'm at the Moda, I notice, people who use wheelchairs, both working there and also attending games and things like that. In the work that you do with Incight, what are some of the barriers that crop up that everybody could be more aware of to make attending events more inclusive?
Well, I'll be honest. I think the Blazers do a pretty darn good job, catering to various needs. And I think the Moda Center, we're fortunate, and there's been a lot of pieces toward that it's really a pretty accessible venue for wheelchair access specifically. There's a lot of seats at all different levels, at least in my opinion. And, it seems like they're providing service for, more physical needs or people who are aging that need a shuttle between the parking lot and their seat with wheelchair services. And, I notice now at games at the bottom, for those with visual impairments, there's that little the captioning, which is pretty awesome. I don't know that I can speak to some of the sensory needs that individuals might have, but it, in my mind, there are some probably things that could be improved upon. But I think, the Moda Center is doing a fairly good job catering to the various needs. But I just think, typical courtesy that you would have for anybody, no matter what their ability is, kind of I would say the general mindset with, interacting with people and, showing that hospitality.
Well, that's good to know that this organization that I like so much and support seems to be making a good effort in that department, and always looking for ways that we can be more inclusive. Hey, let's tell folks about the basketball that y'all are raffling off.
Oh yeah, so we have this great opportunity. We've got a signed autograph team basketball from this year at Blazers provided to us to be able to raffle off for those who would like to not only get a cool team ball with some pretty awesome signatures like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum and so many of our other favorite players from this year. So get a great basketball, but also be able to support the work we're doing and supporting those with barriers. So we've got $15 raffle tickets, and the link, I believe, is available on our website at Incight, which is www.incight.org. And there should be a large icon there that will show you the picture of the basketball to click on. But we are going to be drawing that raffle on December 16th at 4:00. So definitely, I would encourage you to get tickets as soon as you can.
Right on. And we'll definitely put a link to that in the podcast notes. And so people who want to can go straight there. Well, so are you guys ready to talk about your all-decade team?
Absolutely.
Yes, I am. I do want to point out that there was a qualifier for this, that it could not involve anybody from the current team, which made picking a point guard a very interesting proposition.
Yeah, I didn't want to make it easy, guys. Come on.
You achieved that goal.
It certainly made it kind of exciting.
So I gave super general instructions, which were basically pick out an all-decade team. I didn't say whether it had to be the best team or if it had to be your favorite players or whatever. I was just like, pick out an all-decade team for the 2010s, but it can't include anybody on the current roster. So let's start off by maybe kind of just doing super quick, like what your methodology was for choosing these, if you had one. Steve, do you want to start?
Really, I just kind of balanced it out with, production on the court, and then just really it wasn't a problem for guys this decade, but guys who were, involved in the community or good locker room presence and really contribute to kind of that culture that we see in the team today, even though, these guys aren't included, doesn't include guys on the current roster. So that's real general. I mean, really, I did look at some numbers, but like I said, this decade has really had a lot of standout individuals on the team, which was been nice and kind of a change of pace with some of the more colorful characters we've had in the last 50 years of the Blazers history.
So I was kind of looking at this, and it's a lot harder task than I thought it was going to be. There were so many great choices to choose from, but for the 2010s, I had kind of gone through all the different rosters over the last 10 years and kind of tried to write down some of the players. Some of them were ones that I think more were favorites of mine. Ones, I guess, were ones that I thought stood out as a little bit like the better of the athletes on the teams. Some of them are just a little bit, they had more toughness, and so I wanted to just add them to my list. But I guess I kind of went for more the favorite in some cases than the best.
Yeah, mine were all 100% sentimental favorites, which you will probably hear very quickly with my very first pick. Who wants to start off with their pick for point guard?
So my pick is Andre Miller. He just squeaked in. He had one season in this decade, the second of his 2 years in Portland. Averaged 12.7 points per game, 7 assists per game in that year. As a total for that year, he had 566 assists, which is tied for number 10 on the assist total for a single season on Portland's leaderboards, tied with Clyde Drexler. That list is full of guys, mainly Terry Porter and Rod Strickland. So, this is the year after he had his super entertaining 50-point game, so that doesn't quite make the cut for his consideration here. But really, I mean, we all know who this spot belongs to if we include today's roster. So kind of picking through those other guys, I went with Andre Miller.
So I'll jump in and go next because Andre Miller was definitely my pick. That 2010 game, or that 52-point game, happened, I thought, January 30th, 2010. So it squeaked in.
Well, I'm not counting the 2009-2010 season into this decade.
I am, because I wanted to get that Andre Miller game in.
All right.
The 52-point game in. When you added up his assists, were you able to see how many of those were for alley-oops? That's the most important stat.
I did not.
I may have to go back and try to find all the highlights to count that. Yeah. So for me, Andre Miller, total sentimental favorite. I don't have much to add from what you've said. How about you, Scott? Did you have a different pick, or did you also pick?
So I have a different pick. I really did consider Andre Miller, but I picked Steve Blake.
He was my second choice.
Yeah. I just thought he was consistent for what we needed. And it kind of lends into some of the other picks that I have. I thought he would be the perfect point guard for the rest of the cast on the team. And so and he was a good guy, good locker room presence. So I picked him.
Love that pick. Yeah, he was my second. My 2B was Mo Williams.
Yes.
Mostly because my very favorite sports photo, which actually there's a SB Nation thing on Twitter going on right now where people are sharing their very favorite sports photos of the decade, and there's one of Mo Williams basically trying to poke out Andrew Bogut's eyes. And they're in the middle of this big fight, and he Mo's grabbing at his face, and Andrew Bogut is has his hand through Mo Williams's shirt, and there's this big scrum, and so yeah, just initiating a fight with Andrew Bogut just shot Mo Williams right into my pantheon of Blazer legends. But yeah, Andre Miller was who I went with for point guard. So who did y'all go with for shooting guard?
I think I would be surprised if this isn't universal with all three of us for this, but I went Wesley Matthews for my shooting guard pick. 5 seasons in Portland this last decade. Was nearly a 40% three-point shooter when he was here. Great for floor spacing. Great leader, really kind of before Lillard took the reins as kind of that leading locker room voice. A lot of that was Wesley Matthews and leading that defense. And I mean, really one of the most painful moments, and it speaks to Wesley Matthews' profile, is when his Achilles injury in the 2014-15 season. I really feel like that Blazers team was a title contender, that the Warriors team wasn't quite what they became later on in the decade, and who knows what would have happened if Wesley stayed healthy as that season met its conclusion.
Yep, I'm with you. I picked the Iron Man. Just love that guy. That was kind of the saddest Blazer kind of to have left in the last decade, especially for me.
Well, since he did technically play in the 2010s, I did choose Brandon Roy. But Wesley Matthews, for his body of work in the decade was, of course, much longer. So I totally go with Wesley Matthews, but I just wanted to make sure we got a mention of Brandon Roy in there. Because even though he only played, 47 games that last season in Portland, but he did step foot on the court, so I'm going to go with that as my sentimental pick for shooting guard.
And also, I mean, really we mentioned one of the saddest moments. I think one of my fondest memories, I mean, I think it's common for everybody, is his farewell game in the playoffs against Dallas. I think that moment still gives me goosebumps when I watch the highlights of that.
Oh, so, absolutely.
Excellent choice.
Do you guys remember where you were when you watched that game?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working on the road. I was in Reno, Nevada in a hotel, and I woke up, or I didn't wake up because it was still during the afternoon, but I definitely had the front desk called on me for yelling from my room. So I definitely remember where I was.
So you might be a little jealous, but I was actually at that game watching it unfold.
Oh,
it was so awesome. One of the best moments that I think I've ever game or moment I've been at.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I was at Track Down Pizza in Eugene watching it. But yeah, that's definitely something that if you were around and a fan at those days, that you've got your story about that game. All right, so we did the number 1, number 2. How about number 3? Who do y'all have for small forward?
I went with the immortal Nic Batum. Arrived in Portland the decade earlier. 2008 was just a young kid when he showed up here, and I think Portland just kind of got to see him grow up and mature into this guy who could do a little bit of everything. He never really put up huge numbers in any one area, but he did everything for Portland. You know, picked up the toughest defensive assignments, could carry the ball, kind of just did everything, and really was fun to watch him grow up in Portland. And you know, I'm still hopeful that someday he'll make his way back before he retires.
How about you, Scott?
So I had been thinking, and I've got my backup, but I was almost going to put Roy at the small forward. But I guess he's kind of more of a guard. But my first thought was, well, if you're at small forward, I'd put Roy there. But my backup would be Nic Batum. Because, you know, Nick just loved Nicola. Didn't always love the inconsistency at time, but he brought so much to the team. So that would be my backup to Roy.
So one of the things that I learned was I was doing this exercise. I used a Basketball Reference for the rosters and did probably what you guys did, and looked at the roster for every single year. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how few people who are like identified as small forwards have come through Portland in this decade. It's like definitely the one that has the smallest amount of people listed on my Basketball Reference list. And, it doesn't necessarily guys float between, like you were saying, Scott, between playing different positions and everything. But I just thought it was interesting that was by far had the fewest players coming through here. So that's just all to say I had a really hard time because none of them really stood out to me as like, oh, yeah. But somebody who I really enjoyed watching for the brief time that he was here and for whom we can thank for, helping us get the best franchise player we've ever had, that's Gerald Wallace. I just really enjoyed when he played here. He just played like he would just flew around everywhere, and I really just liked his game. And maybe it's because Dan has been talking on the podcast about I think he's been saying kind of like Nasir Little reminds him a little bit of him, and I've had a little bit of Gerald Wallace on my mind, but he would be my pick for the small forward. Anybody have any arguments with that?
No, that's a good pick.
Yeah, that's a solid pick.
He brought so much energy, especially that first season he came.
Yeah.
I can still remember the Ger-ald Wallace chants in the Moda Center.
Yeah.
Also underrated about Gerald Wallace, he had the best voice to listen to in interviews, like the deepest, raspiest voice I think I've ever heard from a player. So always enjoyable to listen to him interview.
That's awesome.
I'm glad you brought up the chant, Scott. I totally remember Gerald Wallace.
Yeah.
Then also Marcus Camby was another one that was fun. But the thing is Damian Lillard is really hard to chant. So like I keep saying we need a good nickname for Damian Lillard that we can chant that rolls off our tongues more, because like mellow, that has a good cadence to it. But Damian Lillard, like we'll be there till like next Tuesday if we start that.
We can just go MVP.
That's what everybody keeps telling me. So I think that's probably I just need to like give up trying to come up with a nickname and just totally go with MVP.
This episode is sponsored by Stash, a smarter, simpler way to start investing. With Stash, you can begin investing in a wide array of companies and diversified funds for as little as $5. Stash offers unlimited trading with no add-on trading commissions, so you can invest without worrying about getting nickel and dimed. You can choose your own stocks and funds to build a personalized portfolio, or let Stash help build one for you. Stash demystifies investing with personalized financial guidance and education, and it can even help you set up a plan for retirement saving. Stash will give you $10 today to get started investing. Just visit www.stash.app with the code SBNation. That's www.stash.app with code SBNation to get your $10 to start investing on Stash. Investment advisory services offered by Stash Investments, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. For disclosures and to learn how to claim your $10 to invest, visit www.stash.app.
Okay, this next one was really hard for me. Power forward, but it was hard for me for a different reason because I had like so many power forwards. Steve, who was your choice for power forward?
I went with LaMarcus Aldridge. 4 All-Star games with Portland in the past decade. Just all time looking at the leaderboard, he's number 4 in Portland for games played all time. He's the rebounding leader. He's number 4 all time in blocks and number 3 in points. Yes, he didn't leave in the happiest of terms. I think he didn't do himself a favor by saying some of the things he said before he went to San Antonio, but really time kind of heals, and really he was one of the most dominant players in Portland's history, and it's tough to make a list with that doesn't include him.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I picked the L trade for number 4. He just has had too much of an impact during this decade and on the franchise to not be on that list.
So, Scott, how surprised were you when he left?
I guess I wasn't completely surprised. I've kind of always, in my mind, thought of LaMarcus as not really the leader type. Like, he wants to have a presence, but didn't want to necessarily be the leader, where I believe Damian Lillard wants to be the leader and relishes that and takes care of that responsibility. And so I always felt like, well, like, he's such a great talent. There's so much more potential that he could reach. And I still don't even know if he's reached the potential he really has as a player.
Okay, so this question's for both of you guys with regards to LaMarcus. The first time he came back, did you boo him? Now, be honest.
I was not at that game, but I will admit that if I was, I probably would have booed. I was pretty bitter at that time.
I don't think I booed him like I did Raymond Felton, but definitely wasn't like I wanted the Blazers to beat the Spurs, obviously.
I booed him with all my heart the very first quarter that he played back in Portland, and after that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I loved LaMarcus way too much to do this, so I was like, I got it out of my system. I felt like it was fair for me to just get it out of my system, and then after that, now like every time he comes back I cheer for him. Not like every time he has the ball, but like when they introduce him and stuff. So I was crushed, but I got over it quickly. So what I learned about choosing power forwards is I have a type, and that type is power forwards. Because, Scott, you probably don't know this, but Al-Farouq Aminu is like one of my all-time favorites for just a variety of reasons, mostly because he loved the chaos that he created on court. But then I also loved LaMarcus. I also right now am super fond of Scal, who I know I can't choose, but he also happens to be another power forward. And I loved Noah Vonleh while he was here. So, yeah. I just love power forwards. I should be a Knicks fan this year, I guess. But I'm gonna go with LaMarcus for all the reasons that you guys just said, because of his longevity. He was here for quite a long time, and just my thing with LaMarcus was always like you said, Scott, he doesn't seem like he's necessarily the guy who wants to be that's out in front verbal leader. But for a while, he just kind of got stuck with that role, and he did the very best that he could. It was going to be Roy and Odin and LaMarcus, and they were going to, take us into the promised land. And when that didn't happen and LaMarcus was the only one left, I feel like he did everything that he could to help the franchise. And for that, I will always appreciate him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, our final regular roster position, center. Now, here's a fun fact. When I looked at everybody who had played the different positions, the Blazers have by far had more centers on their roster than any other position. A lot of them, sure, for like half a year or less, but they have had a lot of centers on their roster. So who did you guys go with for favorite center?
I think this was power forwards were the hardest for you. I think center was the hardest for me. I think I do, like you, I have a type, and it's the guys who do the dirty work. So I just, as a personality and someone I think who instantly meshed with the city, I went with Robin Lopez. The guy was a treasure when he was here. It was 2 seasons. That first season he was here, it was probably one of the most exciting seasons I can remember as an adult. They were so good to start that year. Really, he that 2013-14 season, he only finished behind Damian Lillard for win shares on the team, which is surprising that he finished in front of LaMarcus Aldridge. And really, the defense that Stotts uses to this day was built around Robin Lopez, that ice defense where it's the center dropping to the rim, and really that translates to the success that Jusuf Nurkic has had in this system. So he's the gift that keeps on giving, and his ongoing feud with NBA mascots, as a fellow person who doesn't care for mascots, he will always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good choice. My grandpa always called Lopez the fuzzy-haired guy. But I actually went with something different. I considered Lopez. And this guy just played with just in the decade, just barely. But I picked Joel the Thriller Pryzbilla.
Aha.
And I could not resist not picking Pryzbilla. I loved his approach to the game there, and just how he just would not back down. Like, I still have the Tom Petty song in my head every time, he would like step up to someone and they would play that at the Moda Center. But I just thought he worked hard and was not afraid to just get in there and throw his body around it. You got to have that on your team.
I'm looking at a signed picture of Joel Pryzbilla right now, and he was very close to my first choice. I cheated a little bit with my center because for most of his career with the Blazers, he actually kind of played power forward, and that is Ed Davis. He was playing alongside Kaman and then Nurkic and Plumlee. Then he finally, became a full-time center as the backup. But Ed Davis was just, and like nothing about him stands out on paper. But on the court, he just was riveting to me. Like when he first came to the team, I used to say it looked like he was going after rebounds the way a guy would go after a spider on his wife's head, because he just was lightning quick. Like, oh no, I got to get that first. I got to get there first. I got to get there first. Like he just had these amazing reflexes to just wriggle his way up in there. And I just loved watching Ed Davis rebound. So he is my choice for the center for the all-decade team. Interesting, we all chose differently for the center.
Yeah, good point. The one position, right?
Yeah. So Steve, recap who you've got on as your starting 5.
So my starting 5 is Andre Miller at point guard, Wesley Matthews at shooting guard, Nic Batum at small forward, LaMarcus Aldridge at power forward, and at center I have Robin Lopez.
How about you, Scott?
So Steve Blake at point guard, Wes Matthews at shooting guard, and Batum at the small forward, Aldridge at power forward, and Pryzbilla at the center.
Oh, I miss Pryzbilla. I was just thinking about him the other night. I can't remember why, but okay. Now, I also, and mine were Andre Miller, Brandon Roy, Gerald Wallace, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Ed Davis. And then I also told you guys, you could have a 6-man or honorable mentions. So who did we not talk about that you want to add?
So like I said, and you've already mentioned him as your center pick, Tara, Ed Davis was my 6th man. Only started 12 games in Portland. I think you kind of covered what he brought to the team, and I think his friendship with Damian Lillard, I think, really was one of the hardest departures I think Damian Lillard has dealt with. I mean, that was something he talked about extensively, so he definitely had a special place in Dame's heart and in the city's heart, really, I think. Other guys that didn't come up. I mean, just briefly, Chris Kaman. I really enjoyed him. He was a professional. He was goofy. The story of it was kind of the year after everybody had left. He was the only veteran on the team that was on a non-rookie deal. Well, I guess Ed Davis would have been there too, but he basically had a menu where the younger players could pick out their Christmas gifts, and it was just various items on there. One of my favorite stories. The other guy, 2 guys that didn't come up that I considered. I mean, it was for a half season, but Enes Kanter, I think, will always have a place in Portland's history. I think just because of how successful that run was and the absence of Yusuf Nurkic. I think some of his stuff can be cheesy and hokey, but I think he was someone that I'll always remember his time in Portland. And then really before his contract extension, I think he was a victim of how much money he made and the level of output he had. But I always liked Allen Crabbe. He was a guy that, he made a bunch of money and probably was overpaid, but that's no fault of his own. I mean, you're going to sign that contract if you're the player, but I always enjoyed what he did. He carved a role out on this team as a second pick and was someone that Stotts trusted at a young age, which is rare.
How about you, Scott?
So, let's see. Those were all kind of ones I considered, but the one I went with was Patty Mills, actually. As number 6. I kind of was thinking, well, if I've got Wes Matthews on the team, let's bring back the 3 goggles. And so I kind of went more sentimental and went with Patty Mills.
Patty Mills is also somebody that I considered for my point guard as well. My 6th man is going to be Chief Al-Farouq Aminu. Always have a special spot in my heart. I love all of our 6-men choices though, because they really kind of round out who the kind of the personality of the Trailblazers. It's been a fun decade. You kind of alluded to it at the beginning, Steve. This has been a pretty fun decade, and I don't know if it's just because of my age and how much I've been watching the team this year compared to other years. I mean, I guess my other big time that I look most fondly on is those 90s teams with Clyde and Terry Porter. Do you guys have different in terms of other groups that you kind of consider sort of defining of who the Trailblazers are to you?
Yeah, I would agree with you. A lot of the 90s, that was, I guess I grew up at that time where I was kind of coming of age as a fan, but also as an individual, and just really bonded with that Blazers team. Porter, Drexler, Kersey, Buck Williams, Duckworth, Uncle Cliffy, of course. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of, as I think back, wonder what if Arvydas Sabonis had come earlier, what might have happened? Not that I don't love Duckworth and all of his contributions and all that, but just I always wonder. Mm-hmm. Kind of makes me anyways.
That's a good what if. How about you, Steve?
I think the late 80s, early 90s teams are obviously have a special place in everybody's heart. I was a little young. My coming of age team was really just kind of the team I really identified with and I really loved was the just pre-Jailblazers squad. Scottie Pippen, Steve Smith, Greg Anthony, Damon Stoudemire, Arvydas Sabonis, obviously. And really, Brian Grant has always been kind of a guy I've identified with as kind of my fan favorite and one of my favorite Blazers ever, and still really involved with the community here. And Rasheed Wallace, obviously. And I think that was kind of my team. It didn't have the happiest ending, and like really, I mean, Scott mentioned it. I was a lot older and still cried at the result of the 2000 Western Conference Finals. So that team was very close to my heart, and I always look back at that kind of era and remember a lot of good things and try to not forget the one bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. The game that ended at the end of the third quarter. That's how it all went.
Yeah.
Everybody keeps talking about how the Blazers lost that one. I'm like, what are you talking about? It ended in the third quarter. That's it. It's over. Well, you guys, we have covered a lot of ground, and I don't know if you guys were just watching your phones, but it just came across that David Fizdale has been fired by the Knicks.
Oof.
So time for us to all go get on ESPN and find out what's going on.
Yeah, take that for data.
Yeah. Oh, well, I want to thank you guys both for joining me today and going through this exercise. Scott, do you want to tell folks how they can find out more about Incight?
Absolutely. Of course, we've got a website, www.incight.org, but you can also find us on Twitter at Incight, or Instagram Incight. And of course, we're also on Facebook as well.
Right on. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to get to know you a little bit and hear what your choices were. Steve, why don't you tell folks how they can find you?
Always on Blazers Edge, posting probably more than I should. You can find me on Twitter at Steve D Hoops. Seriously, I will have the link to the raffle when this comes out. When this podcast comes out, click on it. It's $15. It goes to a great cause. It's a very cool prize. Take a few minutes to sign up for it. It's a great thing for the holidays. If you do win, and like I said, even if you don't win, it goes to an excellent cause. So please check that out.
All right, and you can find me at TCB Biggs on Twitter. You can find the Blazers Edge podcast on any place where you get your Blazers Edge, or any place where you get your podcast. Find Blazers Edge, blazersedge.com, at Blazers Edge, and all that good stuff. Thanks again to you guys for joining me, and we will check y'all later.